Leafs fam, what is up? This is the Leafs Convo. I am Norman James. I am super excited because we have Brandon Prust here, part of our interview series. Brandon and I look back on that 04-05 Knights team that won the Memorial Cup in the most dominant fashion ever. Just named the CHL's Team of the Century, and for good reason. We'll get into that, plus Brandon's NHL career, which was pretty good. He paid the price, but he got paid big time. Almost made the Leafs. We'll talk about the Leafs Bruins playoff series and a lot more. Brandon Prust is ready. I am ready. Are you ready? Let's go. Leafs Convo starts now. We are joined by the legend himself, Mr. Brandon Prust. Brandon, it's been such a long time that you and I have spoken, and such a long time since, 2005, that epic year, the CHL Team of the Century, the London Knights winning the Memorial Cup. Where's the time gone, my friend?
Not really sure. Sometimes it feels like a long time ago, and then sometimes you start thinking about it, and it feels almost like yesterday.
What do you remember about those days, and since the Knights were named the CHL Team of the Century for that incredible season? I mean, what images and what things have been sparked by your memory?
Well, I think that whole year in general, for sure. You know, we were started off the year 31 games unbeaten. I know it was during the NHL lockout, so there was a lot of attention drawn on us and the CHL. And, just kind of how historic the whole year was. I think, we lost 7 games, but I know the last 2 games of the year were basically we sat everybody. And so we don't even really count those losses. But and then, just winning the OHL and then kind of, even though we were hosting the Memorial Cup, we still won the OHL and did the right way. And, I was talking to someone the other day, and they asked me about the Memorial Cup, and I said, they said, what was the most kind of memorable part of the Memorial Cup? And I said the first game of the Memorial Cup, we played Rimouski. We were down 3-0 after the first period, and we came back and tied it up and won in overtime. So that kind of got the ball rolling for us, and I think after that we knew we were going to take it.
This is Norman James along with Brandon Prust, the Leafs Combo. Thank you very much for all of your support. Make sure if you're listening to us through the YouTube page, please subscribe, or I'm going to get Brandon Prust to come to wherever you are and ask you politely to subscribe to the podcast. Brandon and I go way, way back. How did Civi become the captain of that CHL Team of the Century? Was it the fact that he was a defenseman of the year at the end of it all? Was he showing leadership on the ice, or do you think he was the teacher's pet? Like, what was it about Civi that made him a captain?
I was a little bit of everything. Civi was obviously a great player and the anchor back on our D. And, he was kind of like I'd say a father figure in the dressing room. He was more the mature one, and, the one the guys kind of looked to maybe for some advice or some guidance. And, he always acted a little older than he always was. So that's kind of why he was, I think, and being a kind of a great player and a great leader. So,
are you ever surprised by how many people acknowledge that team and remember that team? Because, look, there have been so many incredible junior hockey teams between then and now. And it's sometimes tough to put your finger on which NHL star of today represented which particular CHL team at a point along the way. It seems to me that if you were a part of that legendary Knights team, that is something that will always be remembered. And, when you're playing in the NHL, you'd scored 30 goals. Somebody's going to say he was a part of that legendary 04-05 Knights team.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the impact we had. A lot of people remember that year. I think also because of, the great start we had and how dominant we were. But, like I said before, the NHL lockout was that year. So there was no other hockey. There was not much hockey going on. So kind of the whole, all of Canada anyway, was focused on us and seeing how we did. And, I still run into people today, in different cities around Canada, and they all know about that team. And, it was just one of those memorable years. And, I know one that most people don't forget.
It was kind of a no-brainer to be named the team of the century. It's not like you were like this was the ultimate cherry on top. You won your cup in 2005, but it wouldn't be until a decade and a half later when you were announced the CHL team of the century that you guys could finally sleep at night. So it's not like it really truly mattered. But was it a no-brainer, or could you even imagine them coming out with the 83 Pete's team of the century? I mean, it was just hard to top what you guys did.
I mean, we always thought that we were the best team. I know a lot of people compared us to some other teams, even a couple other London Knight teams, and there's been some great ones, right? So
sure,
but I know, I mean, deep down inside, we always believed it, but we were a humble group, and that's kind of what made us so good too. You know, we never. Even though we knew it, we would always respect everybody else, and even everybody that was up for that this team of the century. I mean, we knew we did something special, and we know it will always be hard to break what we did.
0405 Knights versus the 15-16 Knights.
Well, that's the question we always got asked, and we would always. The 15-16 Knights were an amazing team, and they, I remember watching it all, and it was. I mean, it was amazing what they did, and people always asked, who would beat who, and obviously we always said, us for sure, but they were a great team. But I think this little award that we got proves who would win.
Wow, is there not a video game? Is there not a video game where you can, put one fantasy team versus the next? And let's not forget about the 09-10 Windsor Spitfires. I mean, that team was dominant. I went up to Brandon, Manitoba to cover them. Yeah. Brandon Prust, Manitoba. They should rename it Brandon Prust, Manitoba for some reason. But I went out there, and the rest of the league was demoralized. The other three teams were just demoralized because the Windsor just kicked the shit out of them. And then even in 16, it was a situation where the teams were getting bulldozed by Mitch and Matt and the crew, and then it was tough for the rest of the country to put their finger on why London was so darn good. I say this with all due respect. There's a bit of an inferiority complex around the rest of the country that shouldn't be there, but it's still there towards Ontario. And then it was just such a dominating performance by the Knights. It was a pleasure to see. And the interesting thing is about that 05 team, you guys won. You went undefeated, but it wasn't that easy because you had this certain player on the Rimouski Oceanic who was just so tough to handle. Sidney Crosby, when you played against him in those junior games at Budweiser Gardens or whatever, the John Labatt Center back then, did you guys know then that this guy's going to win Hearts, Arts, Stanley Cups, the whole deal?
Well, that was kind of what also made that Memorial Cup that more dramatic. I think just because Sidney Crosby was there, and he was the next, he was the next Wayne Gretzky. He was the next it. And we knew he was the real deal, but it wasn't until that first period of that first game where Rimouski went up 3-0, and I think Crosby had a chance, first shift that dangled the D-man and rang one off the crossbar or something where we were like, oh geez. And we after the first period, Dale comes on in and kind of assigns a checking line, me, Dylan, and Trevor Kell. Dylan Hunter, Trevor Kell, and me. And we just had to shadow him basically the next 5 periods, and we were able to hold them scoreless the next 5 periods. So yeah, we knew after that first period that he was the real deal.
I think it was that opening game. Crosby was pinned in the corner, and I think you were on the ice at the time. He was pinned in the corner and somehow weaseled his way to the ice on his knees, stick handled between someone's leg, and there were 3 guys on him, and he emerged from the corner with the puck and made a pass, and Rimouski nearly scored. I mean, you're thinking to yourself, Brandon, like, okay, through this Memorial Cup, I might get a chance to earn myself passage to the next level, get to the A, maybe get to the NHL. And you're playing against Sidney Crosby knowing that if I get to the NHL, I'm going to have to contend with this superstar for years to come. You did really well in the NHL, Brandon, and you think that you started out Lucas or Saunders? Weren't you playing high school hockey when it all started for you?
Yeah, I was playing. I went to Regina Monday here in
London. That's it. Yeah,
RMC. So yeah, I was playing there. I think I made the nights when I was in my OAC year of high school. Mm-hmm. So I was almost 18. Or maybe I was 18 actually. Yeah. And
wow.
And just kind of went from there. So
you're playing in high school though, and then making the London Knights, a hometown kid, obviously one of those players that the Hunters saw something special in. Remember, for as much as Mark and Dale wanted to bring in the top stars and have them shine and be offer London as a platform to help elevate their careers, the Hunters though deserve a lot of credit for just helping players who may not have thought they could get to the next level actually get there. Can you just talk about that real quick?
Yeah, well, obviously they do a great job in teaching and helping kids become professionals and teach them how to be pros. They also like to have their homegrown talent. Every year they always have a couple guys from London, and they like having, because they know those kids care, and they like giving those kids the opportunity. So they make good draft picks. They're always picking some real talent that might sneak by a lot of other teams, and they got a good eye for it. So they're some of the smartest hockey guys around. So I was very fortunate to get my chance with them, and I have a lot to owe to them for helping me get to the next level and knowing how to play professional hockey.
Interesting thing, Brandon, how hockey works and how time has just gone by. Between, I think, the last time we spoke, Mark Hunter was hired away from the Knights. I mean, he's an owner, but hired away from the Knights by the Leafs. He joined the Leafs, helped create a great draft plan, bring in a lot of great young players. He was at the podium representing the Leafs, announcing the selection of Mitch Marner, a Knights alum. He did so much to help get that Leafs team on a good foundation, on good footing as it goes forward, and now he's already left the Maple Leafs. It's funny how the industry works, eh?
Yeah, there's people are always coming and going in professional hockey and anywhere in hockey and all sports. Players are coming and going, GMs and coaches and all types of personnel. So that's the business, and I'm kind of on a little switch of business myself. So going from a player, trying to maybe get into some coaching or player development, and guys are always moving around, and you're meeting tons of new people and tons of new people, hockey minds and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a lot of fun, and it keeps you on your toes.
What are your ambitions now specifically? You said maybe player development, coaching.
Yeah, I think player development is something that I'd like to get into. And, I got a little taste of it last year, working with the Knights. And it's something I'd like to take to the next level. I like being here in London, and I'd like to always continue to stick around with the Knights, and this is my hometown, so my heart obviously is here, and but the player development side, going into the NHL level is something that I think I'd really enjoy, and something that hopefully can happen in the near future.
I'm not sure anybody can doubt you, Brandon. I mean, you've beaten a lot of odds, and then not only did you beat those odds, you beat them down pretty good. I just want to ask a couple of questions via some of our Twitter followers just before I let you go. Dom asked you, Brandon, having played for a few different NHL teams, does the team's culture play a role in how the guys play? So obviously there's the system that's in place, but, in Montreal, everybody's wearing their heart on their sleeves. In some other places, when you're playing under Lou Lamoriello, it's, no personality, nothing, just get out there and X's and O's, the game. So what does the team's culture do to affect the way you guys play?
Well, I think, culture comes from some different angles too, right? You have the culture of your coach, your culture of your management. You have the culture of maybe a hockey town, as you say, being in Toronto and knowing that everyone's watching and everyone's everyone's riding on you to go out there and bust your hump and win hockey games. And then there's a culture in the dressing room, right? So the leadership within a dressing room that's holding guys accountable and making sure guys are ready to go, every day for practice or every day for games. So, yeah, it's a huge thing. And I think that shows, why there's been a lot of the same teams in the finals, and winning championships, the last 10 years because of a certain culture and, certain leadership that goes in with organizations and leads to winning. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a big factor.
Man, your time in Montreal was unbelievable. And I mean, you left a mark there. Also, you met your wife while playing for the Montreal Canadiens. So the Habs will always be a part of your hockey heart. Cage Man, what did the ref say when he followed you, Prust, in the penalty box during the playoffs while playing for Montreal? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
What did he say? I mean, you can use expletives, but nothing too nasty.
Yeah.
But then again, whatever. It's YouTube.
It was a lot of swearing. I mean, I said a lot of worse things to him on my way to the penalty box. And then, he kind of came and kind of continued to egg me on in the penalty box and ended up peeing me up. And I definitely wasn't happy about that because I'd said my piece and I went to the penalty box and was sitting there pretty quietly. And he's the one that kind of kept at me and I didn't really say anything and he teed me up. So I was definitely not happy there. And that was playoff.
We can use in our imaginations as to the interaction. From your time in the league, this one's from Colin Rideout. From your time in the league, is there anyone who you wanted to go toe-to-toe with and never got to or couldn't? I don't know. You don't go around tapping people on the shoulder, right? I mean, you do what you have to do because it's a necessity. It's part of what your gig was. And, at that time, look, you can even argue guys like you today are still needed in this game. But it's not like you were looking at somebody else going just for fun. I wanted to start throwing mitts.
I guess Marchand would be probably top of the list, right? So,
wow, that would be a huge pay-per-view, to be honest with you.
There's always guys, right? Roussel. I think in Dallas, I always tried to fight him. He would never go. So, I mean, there's always guys that I wanted to fight that got on your nerves, but they're also doing their job, right? So. There's probably a long list if I really sat down and thought about it.
Last one for you. This one's from Beauchamp. If it weren't for that ankle injury in Vancouver, do you think you could still be playing today? Second question, do you ever want to get back into the game in a role of coaching scouting? So you've answered that second question already. If you didn't have that ankle injury, and then, obviously just the wear and tear from the game you played, the style that you played, the role you took on while in this league, not for a long time, but for an effective time. Do you think you'd still be playing?
It's tough to say. The ankle injury hurt me and set me back. I could have continued to play this year, even I could have continued to play in the AHL or overseas, but I kind of figured my body's been through enough, and if I wasn't going to play in the NHL, then I wasn't going to play. So, but it's hard to say. That injury definitely set me back and definitely hurt me for that season. And I think teams, because of my age, were a little worried about taking a chance on me. So it's hard to say though. But, I don't really think about that, or it's kind of in the past, and I don't blame not playing anymore on, any injuries or anything like that.
I mean, you had a longer career than you probably ever thought you would have going way back. I mean, even when you're playing for the London Knights, there's probably times where you're out there being as effective as hell. Such an important key member of a team that would go on to be the greatest ever, the greatest over the past 100 years in the CHL. But you're playing with guys like Corey Perry and Robbie Schremp and Adam Dennis and, a lot of these Danny Savret, a lot of these guys that were just larger than life, Danny Fritchie. And you're thinking, I'm a role player here, and you probably ran through your mind at some point that, winning a Memorial Cup might be the best it gets for me. And lo and behold, that wasn't it. You played, nearly 10 years in the NHL, and you made some great memories. You did some amazing things. You went on some great runs. So no regrets, eh?
No, definitely not. And I never really thought. I guess I never really thought ahead. I always thought, once I started playing for the Knights, I knew that was my opportunity, and I knew that if I played well enough and did the right things, that I'd kind of get my chance. And as long as I worked hard, so I just continued to do that, and I never really thought of an outcome. I knew I wanted to make it to the NHL, but I think also didn't put a ton of pressure on myself. Just love the game and love to play, and always wanted to win. So that's what kind of helped me in the long run.
The Boston Leafs series, was that a series where if you had a Brandon Prust in his prime out there up against a Brad Marchand, I mean, do you make a difference? I mean, I know this. You're just it's a hypothetical. I mean, it's a dream scenario. It's a nightmare scenario. But what did the Leafs lack in that series against Boston? Because it seemed like the Leafs knew what they were going to be getting in this overbearing opponent, and they weren't able to do much to stop it. Even though they got 7 games, it still seemed like they were on their heels for the whole series.
Yeah, well, you like to think for sure that I could have made an impact. I watch the playoffs all the time, and you're always watching and saying, I would have done this differently, or if I was on that team, I would have taken care of this and done that. Who knows if it would have made a difference, but I always like to think that, I was a kind of a momentum-changing type of player. But for the Leafs, it's hard to say. They're still young. I think they have obviously some work to do still. I think they have to get better on the back end. I think Boston was just a little more of the kind of the mature team, maybe. So it's hard to say. Obviously, I think grit too. Like you say, maybe if they had a type of player like myself, but I mean, who knows? It's a new game. It's changed a lot. So I think the Leafs I think they're going to be good. I think if you go into next year or the year after, I think they win that series, right? So I think as time goes on, some maturity will go on, and they'll get better, and they'll start winning playoff series.
And does Vegas win the Cup?
They are looking good. They got a fast team. I mean, they've blown everybody away. Everybody's in shock at what they've done, and but I just feel, someone asked me before, and I just if Washington doesn't win it this year, they don't have much time left, and it's taken them this long. They have to be hungry. I think if Vegas, even if they lose, it's still a win for them. How far they've made it. You just got to think Washington has to be the hungry team, and but who knows? But I'm going to pick Washington anyway. I'm going to take Washington.
I think I'd like to see Alex Ovechkin win a cup, and I know a lot of the haters don't want to see him win a cup, but they love to watch him score 50 a season. It's funny how the NHL works, Brandon. A guy like you coming out of high school, you carve out an incredible career. Thomas Plekanec doing his thing in Montreal, and he gets a tap on the shoulder. You're going to go play for the Leafs for a month and a half. Danny Savret doesn't play very long in the NHL, but one of the games he's called up, he's playing for Philly, and he scores an outdoor game goal against the Bruins at Fenway Park. It's just really funny how the NHL works. You just never know.
Yeah, you never know. But like you said, I'd like to see Ovechkin get a cup. I think he's done a lot of good things for hockey and for the league, and one of the one of the best players to ever grace the game. So I think he's worked hard, and he's kind of showed that he's been really hungry this year, and he's playing some of his best hockey. So I wouldn't mind seeing him win.
Hey, you know what, Brandon? You're a class act. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. All the best to you and MP, and I'm glad you're in London, man.
All right, sounds good, buddy.
Man, time flies. Brandon Prust, what a guy. He's just been a class act and a gentleman from the get-go. He has this persona on the ice of a tough guy, a grinder, an agitator, somebody who's laying body checks and fighting and yapping at refs. Off the ice, the complete opposite. And really what Brandon Prust about, just a really genuine, nice guy, a good guy. He does so much for charity. It's hard for him to say no. He couldn't say no to me when I was bugging him to get him on the radio with me 10 years ago, and he still can't say no to me as I'm pursuing him to come onto this podcast. Lo and behold, I got him here, and we're all better for it. It's amazing to hear different perspectives from people inside of the game, outside of the game, who are always a part of the game, and how they feel about the game, because we love it so much. Brandon Prust, I salute you. Thank you very much. Good luck to you and whatever you're going to do next. Interesting story from '05 and why the Knights are so revered still to this day. They were just the best ever. And it didn't sit well with some people. A bunch of us reporters were waiting in the media room. We wanted to get out onto the ice after the Knights were about to clinch over Rimouski back in '05. And, we were talking about how great the Knights were and just how impressed and blown away we were by the experience and what we had seen from that team. Remember, the CHL's team of the century. And a reporter from out east, you've probably seen him on television before, pipes up and says, the only reason this tournament will ever be remembered, ever, in defiance to all of us, it'll only be remembered because Sidney Crosby played in it. And remember, the Memorial Cup in '05 had no competition from the NHL because the NHL was in lockout mode. And we're all looking at this guy thinking, are you nuts? I should have told him to go F himself. Instead, I asked him, hey man, what's wrong? Who pissed in your cornflakes? Everybody looks at me, and I had just diffused his madness with my sadness. Terrible comeback, but that was a terrible take on his part. I thought I would share that with you. Brent Lale would remember that. We had a reporter from the Star, the Sun, this national guy, a bunch of people there. I was just in shock that he would mention that. And, to this day, I still think about my awful comeback. I'm never going to live that one down. Anyway, Mike and I are going to be back here in the next 24 hours with a standard Leafs Convo. They're never standard. They're always good, but it's the typical stuff, not the interview series. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page, please. We appreciate it very much. We're hitting milestones every single day, and you're going to help us get there. Also, we're pushing the podcast on iTunes just a little more than we have in the past. We're trying to experiment with something. For Brandon Prust and Mike Augello, who's not here and will be back, I'm Norman James. It's been fun. Talk to you soon. Peace.